Yeah, really interesting. Do you have anything you want to add for this bioecological model, or should we go for the recruitment initiatives for sports club?
No, I think it's. I think we can leave the model for now.
Yeah, yeah. So I think the next bullet point is the recruitment initiatives aimed at getting more children involved in sports club. Could you tell a bit more?
Yeah, in my dissertation project, then I studied 5 different initiatives, recruitment initiatives that was organized by like partner in collaboration between several actors. It was sports clubs, municipalities, like sport district federations, and school basically. So these 4 actors were working collaboratively in partnerships in organizing these recruitment initiatives, which I most often call them, and they could look quite different. It could be sports clubs visiting the after school care, or it could be like large sampling events on the weekends, or it could be more smaller sampling events on in evenings during weeks as well. So they could look quite different, these recruitment initiatives, but they all had the the aim of trying to modify conventional sports in order to recruit new target groups. So they were targeted to these children that wasn't part of or isn't part of a sports club. So I started 5 different initiatives in 5 different places in Sweden. And basically what I did was to first I interviewed these actors, the organizations that arranged these initiatives, and so I interviewed like project managers, sports coaches, board members, civil servants in municipalities, and yeah, different staff in the organizations, and was trying to figuring out what their idea or what their plan basically was. How did they view that these activities was going to get the children that was not part of a sports club, how these activities was getting them to be interested in sports and then continue to engage in sports club, and perhaps be more physically active on a daily basis. So I tried to investigate like their idea how this process was going to happen. And so that's what is the first part of this study. And then I also did these interviews with the participating children in the focus group form. So, and the interesting thing there is that their experiences of these initiatives is quite different from how this idea of uh, how the organizations imagine that this would function. While I think some of the organizers, they were thinking of these events like, well, they saw children having like an inherent desire to do sports or to be physically active, and their mission was just to arrange this meeting between the child and the sports club. So they thought that the problem was that children are not aware of that sports clubs exist. So their mission was to like arrange this meeting between the sports club and the child, and in that way more children will engage in sports clubs. But the children, they more, yeah, of course, some of the children, they enjoy these initiatives. Of course, there are always children that love sports, and they just think it's great to have more opportunities to be physically active. They can first participate in these programs, these initiatives, and then go to their sports clubs 2 hours later. It's no problem. But there were this group that I was interested in, the children that is not that physically active. They basically view these activities as pretty pretty sporty as well. It's like driven of kind of the same competitive logic that organized sport or even physical education also is driven by. So they viewed even these initiatives targeting them as like offering them more of the same, like more of the same sport that they already have declined, or that they
Mm.
constantly avoiding. So it was, yeah, quite the opposite of the idea that the organizers imagined.
Mm. And did you figure out some practical ways of improving the situation as you kind of understood this mismatch between the organization's idea and the children's experiences?
Yeah, I think it's mainly two things that I have pointed out in my dissertation project, which these studies belongs to, and which I pointed out to these organizations, which of course I collaborate a lot with them, and I give them feedback on the things that I study. So I think the first thing I said is that if they want to recruit new target groups or children that are not already members in their clubs, they have to change something in the club, in the ordinary business, so to say. They cannot just do some events and then think that the children will participate in events and in some magic way just jump over to the sports club that is working exactly the same way as earlier. They have to change something in the sports club which make the children feel that it's something for them. So that's one thing, and the other thing is that also these initiatives, they were, as I said, they were also too much of sports for some of the children. Some of these really inactive children, they viewed or even these initiatives, although they were modified, as too much sports. So what I my interpretation there is basically that they have to work, if they want to reach this group, they have to work with even more like different kinds of physical activities or more alternative activities, physical activities that doesn't resemble sports at all. I think they have to be much more playful, and they have to like have a logic that does not comes from competitive sports at all. They have to be more playful elements and yeah, basically activities that have other logics than winning and competing and comparing.
And the problem probably is that the people who are working in these sports clubs, they like competing, they like sports, they are very excited. So for them, even figuring out that someone doesn't like it and figuring out something new is probably very challenging. So maybe we should have the ones organizing for inactive should be like maybe inactive adults or who have been inactive earlier.
I think that's a really good idea that you say that, Olli, but I think also the problem is that many of these initiatives, it's a lot of money in these in participating in these initiatives as well, and sports clubs always need money, so sometimes they're happy to participate in initiatives or in programs of that reason. And I mean, they don't. It's not that they don't want more children in the clubs. So I mean, they have good intentions, but as you say, they are not always that eager to change their core business.
Yeah, very very interesting points. And before we wrap up, maybe we discuss a little bit. You purchased some amphibian devices to your department in Karlstad. Could you tell a little bit of your plans? How do you plan to use the devices to measure physical activity? You've been more doing interviews and questionnaires, so a little bit of device-based things. How do you see them?
Yeah, our plan now is to work with a little bit more of mixed methods. So I think I will stuck to or I will keep doing interviews and producing data from children's perspective. I think it's very important, but I think it's really interesting to combine data from children with more objective data, and not only like we are not planning only to using the devices as measuring outcomes. Of course, it's always interesting to examine if the children becomes more physically active, because that's what we want in the end. We want them to be more physically active, and we want that to be visible in the publications. But I'm also interested in investigating how the amount and the intensity and basically how the physical activity, how the characteristic of physical activity also affects the experience of physical activity. So to say, if you have a group of physically inactive children, is it best for them to engage in like short, very intense physical activities, or do they rather enjoy perhaps longer physical activities with not that much intensity? So
Mhm.
physical activity can also be like it doesn't have to be the outcome; it can also be the driver for the outcome, which could be experiences or hopefully pleasureful experiences of physical activity. So what we are doing now is that we have applied for fund for a project for intervention where where we want to test what we call then more alternative physical activities, like a 12-week program with physical activities that a group of inactive children will try, and then we will measure a lot of stuff, of course, but they will try these activities, and we will also have one group to compare with that do the same 12-week programs but with traditional sports activities. So we are trying to compare these two groups. Is it better for this group to do more alternative physical activities, like, and then we have, yeah, playful activities like Mongo or other active video games, or doing jumping trampolines or visiting trampoline parks, or it can be dog walking and more activities like that. So, and we're measuring the amount of physical activity during these activities, and they also do activities on their own at home that they choose for themselves which kind of activity. Uh, yeah, so basically that's what we're doing and trying to understand if these kinds of more alternative physical activity is better for this group than traditional sport activities, which in in our case is like football, basketball, uh, handball, maybe,
Yeah,
and more traditional sports like that. Yeah.
yeah. So basically, you have inactive children, and you divide them randomly to two groups, and the other one is doing traditional, and the other one alternative for 12 weeks, and the outcome measures are the how much do they do physical activity in different intensities, basically.
Yeah, the outcomes is both objectively measured physical activity, of course, and also in the follow up we're interested in. Of course, we want the effects to be there even after 6 months, but also the experience of these activities. I mean, it's really important to also as an outcome. I think I know researchers think different of these issues, but I think I mean, we can have some effects on physical activity because they think it's fun for doing this intervention, and we can have good effects. But we also need to know that they really enjoyed this, that it felt good for them, that they had nice experiences, and that they intend to, or at least have some thoughts of, okay, maybe I could be a person that do physical activity on a daily basis, because these children that are inactive, they doesn't view themselves as children that are physically active. So that's also something that we're going to measure, like more the identity construction and the self concept during this
Mhm.
intervention.
Yeah, and you're doing interviews and questionnaires in addition at that study, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like a very interesting and useful study. I like the alternative ideas, taking the dogs for a walk and trampoline park. My colleague actually did a study about this kind of trampoline park. You
Mm.
can I can send you the link. I think
Yeah.
it was quite a bit of more activity when you go to indoor activity park with the trampolines and everything. So sounds very interesting. Looking forward
Yeah.
of seeing it. And maybe about the Fibion devices, just you have been testing them and doing some measurements. What have you been your honest thoughts of using, seeing the results and so on?
Yeah, we have started trying them and understanding how to use them in best way. Then I think next step for us now is to try to learn how to use them on children, because this is quite small children. So they how and how we get the children to wear them. But our first impression from using them ourselves, me and my colleagues, is that they're both really easy to wear, but it's they're also really nice, like the presentation of the results. You don't have any you don't have to have any like understanding or knowledge or something about really anything, just to understand what the results are. So it's really easy to just plug in the device, and you get the report on the screen. So we are many. Me and my colleagues have enjoyed looking at our own physical activity patterns during a couple of weeks now.
Yeah, that's good. And how small was your participants? You said that small children. How old are they?
I think the youngest will be 8 years old.
8. Yeah, yeah. We need to check. I think we also have this kind of polar bear stickers that are have been working. We have been doing quite a bit of measurements in Finland with 4-year-olds.
Yeah.
And basically, as an award of taking part in the measurement, you get this kind of sticker. It has been improving the compliance and fun quite a bit. So we could share some tips from there. I think that has worked well. And I'm not sure if I showed you, but you can also create the polar bear like children reports. Have you seen those?
We haven't explored that yet, but I've heard of it.
Okay, yeah, I think those will be useful for 8 to 12-year-olds. They may be a little bit too childish for teenagers, although they're kind of simplified, so it's easier to understand than the kind of adults reports. And we are also doing a Fibion context platform. We are launching it soon. So basically you can have a phone application where you can have questionnaires, and maybe we are building a kind of triggering from the device that if there's, for example, activity of 15 minutes, it can ask that, did you do it with a friend or something in the phone? Yeah. So you can get a little bit of context. So not for that study, but maybe for your mixed method studies, it could be useful.
Yeah.
This has been very, very nice discussion, Johan. I thank you for taking time for this podcast. Do you have any final words? Are you looking for any collaboration? Do you want to promote anything? Free word.
Well, if there's any researcher listening to this that also shares the interest in the more physically inactive children and are eager to explore more about the situation of the most inactive children, I'm happy to discuss this more.
Yeah, perfect. This was very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be on the podcast.